everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to create a video giving you tips on how to maintain inner peace when you're going through hardship. And I think that especially at this time where we're going through that coronavirus outbreak, a lot of people are anxious and stressed, and there's all this craziness and panic going on around. So let's just start by what my motto in life is. So for the past few years, my motto has been make the best with what life gives you. And so let me go through that idea and explain what I mean by that and what that means to me. So when you say make the best with what life gives you, this statement kind of has two ideas. So make the best, there's this active verb, this idea of doing something, this idea of, actively doing something. And then there's this more passive side, the idea of what life gives you, the idea of where you are the receiver and when you are a little bit more passive in your role. So I think that for pretty much anything in life, and as you become a more mature adult and you gain more wisdom, you eventually realize that there is this duality to life. There's this idea on the one hand of responsibility, and on the other hand of, let's call that, acceptance. Okay, so responsibility and acceptance. And growing up and becoming wiser and understanding life a little bit better is understanding that these two things go together and there's not just one or just the other. So the idea of responsibility is the idea that in life, you can have certain goals or certain things you want to achieve, and then you can try to do things to achieve that, to set the proper steps, or to do what you can to achieve that goal, to educate yourself on whether the steps to take or whether the precautions to take to achieve that specific goal. And then on the other side, you have the idea of acceptance. And acceptance is the idea that sometimes you might do absolutely everything in your power to try to encourage a certain goal. However, there are certain things that will be out of your control. Certain things in life will happen and you won't necessarily have control over. And that's where you have to be able to adapt and to accept whatever comes to you. And so I think that immaturity comes from kind of this unbalance between these two things. So people who haven't learned a lot yet from life will often think either that they have no control over whatever happens, so they won't take responsibility for anything, they won't make efforts to try to encourage favorable outcomes. Or on the other hand, immaturity could also be the fact that people think that they can control everything, that if they do absolutely everything the way that they think it should be done, that they will definitely get the outcome that they want. Whereas we know, when you know that when you become a little bit wiser and a little bit more mature, you understand that it's kind of like a balance in the middle. So yes, the things that you do will help favor a better outcome or favor the outcome that you want. But sometimes, even though you do absolutely everything right or everything the way you're supposed to, it's just going to turn out a different way, and you have to be okay with that, and you have to be able to adjust and to accept whatever comes your way. And when you're able to balance these things out just right, that's when you can achieve inner peace. And so let's try to apply this to the case of the coronavirus, because I've applied this idea every time I went through something difficult in my life. I've tried to balance these two things, responsibility and acceptance. And that's why I always think make the best with what life gives you, because I think when there's a challenging situation that you're trying to make better, yes, it is okay, and yes, you should try to educate yourself and do everything in your power to make it better, but at the same time, you have to be able to realize that you do not have control over everything, and to let go and to have faith that if something happens that isn't necessarily the outcome that you want, you'll be able to adjust and adapt and grow from that more negative event, okay? So in the case of the coronavirus, how have I applied this idea? So basically, if you look at the idea of responsibility and acceptance in this case. So responsibility, the way that I view it is that we know, okay, there's this outbreak going on. So taking responsibility to me comes in the form of education. So education is power. I think that when you educate yourself, first of all, you can better understand the situation. And sometimes our misunderstandings or things that we think are true that aren't necessarily true are causing us fear. And so when we actually know what the real thing is, sometimes that can actually help reduce some fears. But also becoming educated helps you do whatever you can to help make the situation better. So in the case of the coronavirus, like I said, I think that becoming educated, understanding what it is, understanding why governments are taking certain measures, understanding what you can do as an individual to help with the current situation, that is very key, and that's taking responsibility for this situation. So in this specific case, I can go over kind of briefly what I learned about coronavirus to help me become more responsible with this issue. Now, don't take any of this information that I'm saying for the absolute truth, because first of all, I am not a medical professional. I am not a health authority in the field, although I have been trying to get my information from sources that are reliable as much as possible, but also because the situation might be changing. So when I'm recording this today, this is what we know, or the information that I've been able to gather, but this might change over the next few weeks or the next few months. And so what have I learned about this that has helped me become more responsible? First of all, I think that a lot of the fear comes from the fact that a lot of people have no idea what would happen if they would get the virus, and a lot of people think that if they would get it, they would definitely die. Whereas if you actually look at the stats and the facts, because unfortunately several other countries have kind of gone through it, so we can kind of learn from what happened there and look at the stats from there, you can actually see that a lot of people who get it only have milder symptoms. So actually the majority of people. Now, that has led some people to think, well, it's just a flu. Why are we going all crazy about that? And so if you stop your reasoning here, that's where you haven't educated yourself thoroughly enough or properly enough to really be responsible, to be fully responsible. So the reason why we are taking this very seriously, I mean governments and health authorities and all of that, is because there is, however, even though for a lot of people it wouldn't be a big deal, for another group of people, a smaller yet still very substantial group of people, the virus can have very, very serious consequences and can lead to death and has led to many deaths. And so now how can we help improve this, and why is this a problem that it has led to many deaths? Well, that's kind of obvious, but I'll go into that a little bit more detail. So the problem is that these people that are a little bit more vulnerable, so it can be people that are older or people who have chronic conditions or pre-existing cardiovascular or respiratory problems, when they catch it, they are at a significantly increased risk of developing additional complications. But if they get the proper medical care, a lot of them can actually get through it and survive it. But the problem is that with the coronavirus, the issue is that it is very, very contagious. So what happens is that if it spreads out very quickly through the community and all these vulnerable people get touched at the same time, our health systems will become overloaded. There will be too many cases for the amount of doctors and nurses and resources and meds and all of that are available. And that means that all of the patients that need proper care will not be able to get the care that they need. And unfortunately, that's what happened in Italy. So in Italy, what they saw is that the spread was so quick that they had so many cases coming in. Hospitals became overloaded. The health professionals running all over the place. Certain doctors had to choose between treating one patient and the other just because they didn't have enough resources like respirators to treat everyone. And this is why the governments, for example, here in Canada are taking such extreme measures, because we want to avoid a situation where our hospitals become so overloaded that we're not able to help these people that do experience the more severe side effects. But not only do we want to help these people that have the more severe cases and they're more at a risk of death, but we don't want our hospitals to be overloaded just because there's other people who already have pre-existing conditions. There are people who are going to get into accidents, who are going to, develop more health problems, and they're going to need to have access to these services. So that's why we want to make sure that we never are overloading those systems. And so that is why we are basically taking all these measures to try to reduce the speed of the spread of the virus. So the idea is that, for example, and these numbers aren't true, I'm just saying random numbers just to give you kind of like an idea. Let's say that every infected person would infect 4 other individuals. What we want to bring that number down. We want to have, for every infected individuals, fewer individuals, let's say 1 or 2 infected instead. And so that's why all these measures are taken to close down schools, to have people work from home, to close down gyms and the library and stuff like that. Because the more you close down these things, the less people will come into contact with one another. And the less people come into contact with one another, the less the virus is going to spread. And the less quickly the virus spreads, then the fewer people come in at the same time needing emergency intensive care in the hospital, and the fewer people that come in to get those more intensive care, well, then the better chance of survival they each have, and the lesser hospitals are overloaded. Okay, and that's why they're also asking you to wash your hands and cough in your elbow, and keep a certain distance from people, and avoid handshakes, and not go into gatherings where there's many people, because basically all of these recommendations, and you can go and look at your government's website to see the recommendations. You can go and look at the World Health Organization's website, and they will list all of the things that we can do to slow down this spread, and that is the reason why. And so when you become educated about what the problem is and why we're doing the things that we're doing, and then you do whatever you can based on those recommendations that come from your health authorities to help with this situation, that's what taking responsibility means. Okay, so personally, I am trying to follow these recommendations as well as I can. And if everybody does the same thing, we're all working together and we're all making the situation better. So that's what responsibility is. That's what I mean by taking responsibility, is by becoming educated about what's happening, why we're doing the things that we're doing, what we can do. Now, once you've become educated about that, you can't forget about the acceptance part, because if you think that you can control absolutely everything by, trying to micromanage everything in your life or in everybody else's life, I'm sorry, but sometimes that will be out of your control. And so despite all of those efforts, unfortunately, this virus comes with, it comes with a lot of negative things. So yes, some people are going to get really sick, and yes, some people, more vulnerable people, are likely going to die, unfortunately. And let's just not hope that that is not you or someone around you, someone in your family who's a little bit more at risk. But you don't have control over that. That's the thing, is that once you've taken responsibility for all of that, you don't have control over what happens. And yes, it means for some people a bit of a reduction in the quality of life, in the sense that you won't necessarily be able to travel the way you were intending to, or go to see shows the way that you wanted to, and you might have to postpone certain things. And yes, that comes with negative sides, but if you're able to do everything that you can, be responsible, and then just accept and surrender to the situation, that's when you will achieve inner peace. Because there's no need of becoming frustrated over the fact that you can't do what you wanted to do, or of becoming super, super anxious of what is going to happen if I get it, or if my grandma gets it, or if my, I don't know, let's say you have someone, my friend who has asthma or some type of cardiorespiratory problem has it. Those things are things that are out of your control. So once you've taken responsibility, you have to be able to acknowledge that these things are a possibility, and of letting them go and just accepting whatever happens, and then adapting and adjusting depending on if these negative things happen. And that is really the secret to gaining inner peace. So I think that when people become really panicked and go crazy over things like buying toilet paper and supplies for like 4 years in terms of food, I think that comes from, first of all, not properly taking your responsibility, not really understanding what's going on, because honestly, toilet paper is really not the thing we should be worrying about right now. And then on the second part, or on the second hand, it's not being able to acknowledge that we don't have control over absolutely everything. And so not acknowledging that lack of complete control will often be a cause of panic or fear, especially when you've never been through difficult things in your life. Being faced in a situation that is so unknown and out of your comfort zone and your control, for certain people can be very, very scary. But just know that when you're going through difficult times, yes, it's not necessarily fun, but you will just become a stronger person. And I think that our society will also become just stronger out of it, because hardship will often make us grow, make us learn things about us, make us learn things about others. And I think that every day is worth living, even days that are a little bit more gloomy or more difficult. You always have to try to see the positive in every day, and to try to grow from it, because the truth is that we only all have a certain amount of days on earth, and you want to make the best out of it and try to appreciate all the positive things that you have around you, and then grow from the more negative ones. So hopefully this video has helped you reduce your anxieties, or help you find ways to gain a little bit more inner peace during this difficult period. So please try to keep on following your government's recommendations in terms of what you should be doing to help prevent the spread of the virus, and help others be a little bit more educated about it. Because even if you are a youngish, healthy-ish person, think about all those people around you that we need to make sure stay safe. Think about, grandparents, aunts, uncles, people around you who have compromised immune systems, and think about them and try to do that for them. And if that isn't enough for you, well, just think about the fact that what happens if you have a car accident and then you get to the hospital and they can't treat you because they're so overloaded with all these severe pneumonia cases due to the virus, severe complications due to the virus. So let's just all try to stay calm, stay educated. No need to watch the news 24/7. Go online, read reliable sources, do what you can, and then accept what you can. Just make the best with what life gives you. Bye.